Hi, friends. Today, we're talking about the masters of siege warfare, attrition experts, and arguably the MVPs of the Traitors in 30K, the Iron Warriors. The Iron Warriors are some of the coolest Traitor legions, as they're perhaps the most tactical of the Chaos Forces. Which, honestly, isn't saying much when the competition is Gooner and brain damage, but regardless, the Iron Warriors were known for their brutal tactics and callous demeanor. The Iron Warriors were among the most stubborn legions, which is saying a lot based on the average Primarch demeanor, and the Iron Warriors strongly abided by their core strategies and would do anything that was asked of them. This made them a reliable workhorse legion since they could be trusted to carry out any order no matter how destructive it was to the legion. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's take it back to their origins. The Iron Warriors were the 4th Legion and were originally made up of members of the gun tribes of Terra. Their Primarch was Perturabo, and his gene seed was one of the most stable and easily implanted. This allowed the Legion to grow much quicker than others and would help fuel their brutal attrition tactics. They proved themselves early in the Great Crusade as a reliable Legion, but their stubbornness proved to be a potential weakness for the Legion as the Imperium faced a myriad threats of the galaxy. Although the Iron Warriors had sound and well thought out tactics, they would very strictly follow these tactics and do what they saw as logical, even if the tactics were not the most well suited for their enemies. Essentially, the Iron Warriors are the type of guys to throw good old rock every time. They'll stubbornly throw rock until you second guess yourself into finally throwing scissors, at which the Iron Warriors plug in their super speakers and announce, "Out attrition, bitch! Woo!" But, anyways, Horus actually saw this stubbornness as a strength. Their tactical inflexibility and unwillingness to veer off their preferred strategies made the Legion predictable to work with, and a good Legion to do whatever stupid shit that you didn't want your own sons doing. Plus, the Iron Warriors cared little for honor or glory, unlike most of their cousins. This meant that the Iron Warriors were sent to the most brutal war zones and were expected to take the brunt of enemy punishment since they were so numerous and willing to do whatever they're tasked with. Being the Legion that did all the bitch work predictably made them bitter and resentful. But luckily, there are little bitches who did all the bitch work, so they still followed all orders, just like more bitterly. And needing their magic space daddy didn't really help things much either. In fact, Perturabo arguably made the Legion worse off than it ever was. Perturabo had landed on the mountainous planet of Olympia, and his tactical genius, impressive logical prowess, and affinity for technology made him a powerful military engineer and warlord. Upon meeting his sons, Perturabo studied his sons' performance thus far, and he saw that they were one of the most reliable legions who brought many worlds into the Imperial fold through brutal and effective attrition, and they're widely feared as a legion of great warriors. And Purdy said, "Boo, this sucks. Fuck my stupid sons. Why can't they be better? Oh." And so, to establish his dominance and show his sons how things would be ran here and out, Perturabo ordered decimation upon his legion. He held a fun little lottery where 1 in every 10 legionnaires would be chosen, and his squad mates would have to beat him to death. Afterwards, Perturabo would demand perfection and further accentuate the Iron Warrior's key traits. They would further perfect the art of siege and defense, as well as getting a new type of marine called Warsmiths. Warsmiths were the Iron Warrior equivalents of Praetors, and this funky fellow would analyze all the battlefield conditions in order to use cold, hard math to calculate the best ways to utilize Iron Warrior forces to crush their foes. Yep, the Imperial Fist leaders are cool knights and stuff, while the Iron Warriors are led by nerds. Anyways, though, with Perturabo back, the Iron Warriors strove for perfection even more so than before, and failure of any kind would be brutally punished. With their brutal way of war and team killing antics, it's said that the Iron Warriors took the highest casualties of the Great Crusade. But their true villain arc started at Olympia. If you ignore the prior slavery, genocide, murder, etc., that is. But sometime into the Great Crusade, news came that Perturabo's homeworld of Olympia had rebelled against the Imperium, and so Mr. Turbo threw a generational tantrum with the boys and razed Olympian cities, genocided the planet, and ordered his favorite, decimation! Good old Purdy ordered 1 in 10 Olympian survivors to be killed as penance for their betrayal. And during the siege, Perturabo also killed any Iron Warrior who refused to partake in the genocide and myriad other atrocities. And then, when the dust settled and it was all over, it was so bad that the famously callous Iron Warriors were disgusted with the atrocities they committed. However, luckily for the Iron Warriors, Horus came on in and told them, "Hey, little guy, I know you feel bad about what happened on Olympia, but you know what? Those guys were dirty traitors and they kinda had it coming. So, I know you literally just genocided your home for betraying the Imperium, but why don't you guys join up with me and betray the Imperium?" To which I imagine Perturabo went, "Beep boop beep beep, brain noses, bzzz." Okay, yeah, that sounds good to me. So, the resentment that was building in the Iron Warriors throughout the Great Crusade, in conjunction with the acceptance and forgiveness Horus offered the Legion, led them to join the traitor forces and partake in yet another atrocity when they brutally murdered their cousin legions at the Isfahan Drop Massacre. And despite how much I poke fun at them, the Iron Warriors actually are really badass. And in the Heresy, they proved a valuable ally to the traitor forces as they continue to get shit done and do all the hard work while the Glory Hound legions looked pretty. But perhaps Perturabo and the Iron Warriors' greatest moment was the Siege of Terra, where he led one of the greatest, if not the greatest, sieges of all time, and he broke through the Imperial Fist's indomitable solar defenses and fought his way to Terra. But despite their effectiveness and success, Perturabo despaired when he realized that his brothers had fully fallen to the Chaos Crackpipe and were disgusting little freaks. You see, Purdy and the boys make poop the old-fashioned way, so no New Age warp trash to taint their sieges. And since Perturabo staunchly refused to use warp powers and chaos abominations, Horus would begin to favor other Primarchs for the siege, and this disgruntled the King of Bitterness enough to get him to bitterly abandon the siege. And without the Iron Warriors, the Siege of Terra made like a sequel trilogy and failed with no coherent plan beyond cool space battle looks cool. And with Horus defeated, the remaining Iron Warriors evacuated and joined up with Perturabo. They fortified parts of the Eye of Terror, as well as their Empire of Iron in real space. Of the traitors, they are one of the most, if not the most, coherent legions post-heresy, since most of the others devolved into disparate warbands. But the Iron Warriors' greatest victory was on Sebastus IV, where Perturabo crafted the Eternal Fortress. This was an evil-ass torment nexus made up of miles of bunkers, trenches, traps, and other defenses as Perturabo declared it unbreachable. And rage bait successful because, upon hearing of the Eternal Fortress, Dorn declared that he, and I quote, would dig Perturabo out of his hole and bring him back to Terra in an iron cage. But unfortunately for Dorn, it was not Perturabo's hold that would be violated that day, and so happened the infamous Iron Cage. Upon reaching the world, the Imperial Fist began their siege of the fortress, expecting an epic honor duel between the legendary rivals. But the only honor that the Iron Warriors care about is honoring the IOU for an ass kicking that they left the Fist during the siege. The fortress demonstrated Perturabo's genius as it was meticulously designed to exploit the Imperial Fist and break them apart. And after days of fighting, some Fists had finally broken through to the center of the fortress, which was just a little open field to kill more Fists. And after 3 weeks of getting toyed with and killed by the Iron Warriors, the Fists were saved by Guilliman and the Ultramarines. It's likely that Perturabo could have completely wiped out the Imperial Fist at the Eternal Fortress, but he was having too much fun torturing them and he never really got around to it. Also, the cope that the Fist actually wanted to die doesn't really work when Dorn literally declared that he was going to bring back Perturabo in an iron cage. Yeah, they partook in the siege as a form of penance, but it was still a huge objective loss for them considering that they got their asses kicked en masse and failed their stated mission for an ego trip. However, despite his triumph, the torment and bloodshed Purdy inflicted on the Fist was so great that it led to him ascending to a Demon Prince, which, for Purdy, totally sucked considering he hates Warpcraft and such. And a lot of people think that it's silly that he became a demon prince, but I'm gonna go against the grain here because I think it's actually a good narrative beat. Firstly, it gives us a cool lore that Purdy and the Iron Warriors self mutilate the warp corrupted parts of themselves to replace them with mechanical components, but it also shows that working with the warp is treacherous and will eventually corrupt you in one way or another. Unless your name's Johnny, you simply can't work with the devil and not get fucked over. Perturabo simply got so caught up in antagonizing his rivals that he allowed himself to get infiltrated by the Chaos Gods and turned into a demon prince. But anyways, in the current setting, the Iron Warriors continue to do what they do best, and they conduct sieges on Imperial worlds to pillage resources, slaves, and do some good old murder, as well as erecting evil-ass fortresses across the warp and real space as monuments to their treachery. The Iron Warriors continue to be engineers and smiths, and they continue to have a pretty unique fighting style as traders. From their start in the Great Crusade, the Iron Warriors utilized a lot of new tech for their siege, as well as innovating new weapons. And in 40k, the Iron Warriors have a lot of warsmiths and demon smiths that repair and create new machines of war. Many of these are infused with demons for some extra killing capabilities. It was also among the Iron Warriors that the first Obliterators were sighted. And the Obliterators are some of the coolest things ever. These are Marines inflicted with the Obliterator virus that mutates them into living weapons, merging their flesh with armor and weapons in hulking abominations. Through whatever warp magic or demon nonsense that inflicts them, Obliterators can spawn new weapons and ammunition from within themselves and are walking instruments of destruction. To many Chaos followers, Obliterators are the perfect fusion of flesh and technology. However, to the Iron Warriors, despite their love of technology, any mutation is disgusting, so even their Obliterators cut off and replace their mutated parts with cybernetics. But finally, to cap off the Iron Warriors, they have a very effective fighting style that makes them a terrifying opponent to face. In their sieges and defenses, the Iron Warriors utilize mass artillery, heavy armor, and demon engines to break down their enemies. And these war machines are protected by mass legionary formations that excel in brutal melee and close quarter combat. Due to their reliance on artillery and big guns, a lot of people tend to overlook this fact, but the Iron Warriors are some of the most skilled melee fighters of the Marine Legions. Some even compare their skill and brutality to the likes of the World Eaters and Blood Angels. The Iron Warriors are also known for their brutal tacticians, usually in the form of their warsmiths, but nearly all Iron Warriors are well studied in the art of warfare. Even outside of battle, they practice and study warfare to better their strategies. They also famously play war games for leisure and to test their strategic prowess. They're just like us for real, for real. However, despite their effectiveness, they do have some notable weaknesses. Most notably is their aforementioned stubbornness and strict adherence to their strategies. The Iron Warriors strongly believe in their own strategies and logic, so much so that they're sometimes unwilling or outright unable to adapt tactics from already established plans, often to their own detriment, leading to mass casualties. This is further exacerbated by their callous warsmiths and willingness to carry out their orders no matter the cost. A big example of this flaw is when Perturabo faced the Imperial Fist fleet led by Alexis Pollux. Perturabo crafted a perfect strategy to completely destroy the Fists, but he crafted this plan to counter Sigismund's fighting style. So when he fought a fleet commanded by Pollux, he was pretty handily beaten down since the Iron Warriors simply aren't that adaptable. But despite this, usually the Iron Warrior plans are good enough to earn them victories, so the lack of adaptability can be overcome with a ton of Marines, constant artillery, and a can-do attitude. But anyways, that's the Iron Warriors, and I actually quite like them. They're usually in my top 5 Traitor Legions, and they have one of my favorite schemes of all Space Marines. The simple gunmetal and hazard stripe look just looks so good to me. I'm still Team Fist, but like any good rivalry, I think both sides are real cool. Plus, Perturabo kicked Angron's ass, so he's a top tier Primarch in my books. And in the future, when I finally decide to make Primarch videos, I definitely want to talk more about Purdy since he's pretty interesting, especially with his powers of innate knowledge. Also, everyone likes Hanzo, so I'll probably talk about him sometime in the future as well. But anyways, thank you for watching, and thank you to all my awesome Patreons. You're all very epic. And as always, please like, comment, subscribe, and consider sharing to all your Turbo Autism Marines. Thanks. Yes, and they made the Demonculaba.